Afternoon, and welcome to another forum sponsored by the Hibbing Area Chamber of Commerce. And tonight we have three candidates for the office of Sheriff of St. Louis County. And we appreciate their willingness to be here this evening and answer some of the questions and give you, the voters, a chance to hear about both their background and their understanding and views on different issues connected with law enforcement. Again, thanks to Hibbing Public Access Television for recording and broadcasting this, making it available to you, the voters, and we look forward to a good forum together. I'm Pastor Dan Erickson. I'll be asking the questions along with my colleague, Mr. Steve Potts of the Hibbing Community College, and Shelley Hansen, the president of the Hibbing Area Chamber of Commerce, is our timekeeper this evening. So we'll start with your opening statements. Each of you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and we'll start with Chad Walsh.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Chad Walsh. I am running for St. Louis County Sheriff as a write-in candidate. I'm born and raised Hermantown, graduated from Hermantown High School. Left for the military as soon as I graduated, where I spent time as a military police officer, been stationed all over the world. I am a disabled vet. I did come back and took a job in South Dakota as a police officer for a few more years to move up here. After I moved up here, me and my wife started a couple different businesses, which are currently running today, so we employ a few people. And I currently work for the Moose Lake Police Department, so I am an active law enforcement officer. I'm running for St. Louis County Sheriff because we need a change in law enforcement. Not only do I bring a law enforcement background to this, but I bring a business background, which is really important being the sheriff. It's important to be a law enforcement officer, but it's also important to have a business background so you can understand budgets and how to manage them. And I also know how to manage employees. We have our own employees, so I manage them very well. It's a team effort, and as sheriff, I want to bring that. We have a big divide between law enforcement and the citizens. And for the last 18 months, I've been out talking to the citizens and campaigning on breaking down that divide between us and them, and that's very important. And we need to have that. We need to open up the accountability and everything else that comes with that. So thank you for the opportunity today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad. Gordon?
Hi, I'd like to thank you for having me, the chamber, and this is a great opportunity for us to tell a little bit about ourselves. And my name is Gordon Ramsey. I'm raised in Duluth, went to Duluth Public Schools and UMD, where I got my bachelor's degree in criminology and sociology. Went on to St. Scholastica, where I got my master's degree, and I'm also a graduate of the FBI Academy. I started in policing very early, at age 20. I started in Iron River, Wisconsin. While I was attending UMD, I'd work weekends there part-time. And 20 was a young age to start in policing, and I should have known because one of my first days alone, someone called 911 on me and said there was a 15-year-old who stole the squad car, and they're going down the highway. But it was great. It was a great place to start for me, and really the relationships of small-town policing helped formulate who I am as a police officer and police leader. After working in Iron River, I went to Duluth PD. In 1997, I got married to my wife, Tracy. We've been married for 25 years. We have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. We currently reside in Lester Park in Duluth. I was the Duluth Police Chief from 06 to 16. We won many community policing awards, reduced robberies, burglaries, auto thefts, and shootings to levels not seen in decades. Went on in 2016 to Wichita, Kansas, a city of about 400,000. Left my hometown. I had never left Duluth and wanted to experience and learn new things. And it was a great department, busy. Last year alone, we had 4 police officers shot, including an in-line of duty death. And I learned a lot, and we made that department better. But ultimately, home is where the heart is, and we missed it and moved back to Duluth last year.
Thank you, Gordon. Jason?
Good evening, everyone. And I would also like to thank Public Access Television as well as the Hibbing Chamber. My name is Jason Lakovsky. I'm also running for St. Louis County Sheriff this fall. Currently, I am the undersheriff, meaning second in charge. I'm a lifelong resident of St. Louis County, currently living in Friedenberg Township with my wife, Tammy, of 24 years, our 15-year-old son, and our 14-year-old daughter. I'm a graduate of Duluth-Denfeld, UMD as well, with a major in criminology and a minor in sociology. I'm also proud of the fact that I was able to play 4 years of Division II baseball up there, Rookie of the Year, and captain. So, fond memories. I have been working for the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office for 24 years. During that time, I have achieved every promotable rank within our organization, and I have worked in or supervised every division within our organization. Why is that important? We'll get into that this evening, I'm sure, but there are some subtle differences that I'm encouraging voters to do their research on in terms of a sheriff's office versus a police department. The duties and responsibilities are slightly different. Throughout my career in my organization, I have familiarized myself with each and every responsibility. Specifically, the 911 Communication Center. We operate a primary PSAP, serving the city of the first class, that being Duluth, but also 180 user agencies countywide. This includes fire, EMS, rescue squad, and law. Processing over 200,000 calls for service a year. So a daunting task from a division that's not necessarily associated with a police department. The jail we'll get to more, as well as the Office of Emergency Management. Again, thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity for everyone to get to know me personally and professionally.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Gordon, we'll start with you with the first question. What one item on your resume or one personal quality you have do you think makes you most qualified for this position?
Well, I would say it's overall experience, almost 30 years in policing. And during that time, I've been very engaged with the community. For me, leadership and public service is about helping others. When you look at my resume and the experience, it involves a lot of board work, whether it be boys and girls clubs or women's shelters. For me, that service of helping move our community forward, helping abused women, helping kids that don't have support at home is critical. As well as the experience of being a police chief for 16 years, managing a budget of $110 million and almost 1,000 employees, dealing with those issues of officers being shot, officer-involved shootings, and the last few years, the tenuous nature of policing, given the environment around the George Floyd death. It has been very challenging. We continue to lose police officers and people to law enforcement. We can barely fill vacancies. And one of the things that I've done is created teams of great recruiters to the point where my last department, we increased the number of applicants twofold because of our recruiting efforts. So I would say overall experience is how I would answer that question.
Okay, thank you, Gordon.
Yes.
Jason, same question for you. What one item on your resume or one personal quality do you have that you believe makes you most qualified for this position?
I would also state experience. Again, being the only candidate from a sheriff's office, I had a front row seat throughout my career to understand what the duties and responsibilities are. Having advanced through every level, I was able to understand how we as an organization affect our constituents or our voters or our citizens. Rural policing is somewhat different than metropolitan policing or a city of the first class. Geography, for one. St. Louis County is very diverse and unique. Geography is one area where it creates potential struggles. My ability to understand the needs of rural policing, as well as working with the municipalities within our organization from a technological standpoint, having that knowledge of 911 and understanding that a Hibbing police officer, a Hibbing firefighter have different needs than a Duluth police officer or Duluth firefighter. Put on top of that the needs of someone from French Township who's a volunteer. all of those needs are different, and the ability to balance the needs and meet the needs of our citizens is important. So I think those qualities are something that I reflect on.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Chad, your turn. What one item on your resume or personal quality that you have makes you believe that you're most qualified for this position?
Yes, thank you. Experience also, I'm going to say that I come with a different background of experience, which makes me a little different than everybody else. You know, being in law enforcement is great, and you can be in law enforcement for 25, 30 years, and that's phenomenal, but you lose touch with your community. You know, I bring a law enforcement background to this. Also, I bring a business background to this, which is totally different. You need to have somebody who understands what's going on in your community. And if you've just been in law enforcement your whole life, you're not going to understand what everyday citizens are feeling, because they're not going to tell you. And you get shadowed by just being there. So I'm going to say the biggest thing that I bring to this is a fresh perspective, one who understands, yes, the law enforcement background, the management background, and the leadership experience background I bring, but I also bring the community side, the one from being a business person and understanding what it's like to be in the community and what the community wants and listening to them. That's a huge thing. And the sheriff it's two roles. It really is. So my background brings that into perspective. You know, not just having law enforcement, but having that business background, that community involvement background, and serving the communities is very important.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks.
We each have 30 seconds for rebuttal or additional time. So Gordon, you have 30 seconds.
I really don't have anything to add to what I already said.
That's fine. Jason?
Nor do I. Thank you.
Chad?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Jason. How do you intend to work effectively with other law enforcement entities in the position of sheriff?
Well, I'm going to continue the path that we already have established in terms of understanding their needs. Again, as I previously stated, the needs of each agency is different within our county just because of their sizes, the constituents they serve. You know, an RMS project that I'm sure will come up during the course of this forum in the last 4 years has caused a bit of a fracture within our law enforcement agencies in terms of the sharing of information. We're trying to work through that. The reasons why that happened are behind us. But moving forward, I've had a front row seat in terms of working with agencies as they've chosen to go a different path and ensuring that the men and women that are working on our streets don't compromise not only their safety, but their ability to do their jobs and serve the citizenry. As a 911 supervising deputy, I was in charge of our computer-aided dispatch system. That was our ability to get information from the 911 call taker to the squad cars on the street, the information process to them. I would say I was instrumental in having one agency be able to transmit information because of an interface that was created and bought by me.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Chad, same question. How do you intend to work effectively with other law enforcement entities in your role as sheriff?
Yes, thank you. We need to open the door. You know, the sheriff's department belongs to everybody in all the communities. So when it comes to law enforcement, we need to open the door to all the law enforcement agencies of St. Louis County and invite everybody to the table so we can all be on the same sheet of music. You know, I've spent numerous hours all over this county, and I'm telling you that's where the biggest breakdown is. Agencies don't feel that they're getting that level. So that's the first thing, and we need to listen to what they want. You know, can we make it work together in all the agencies? Absolutely. It takes a good facilitator to make that happen. It's not just about leading people and managing budgets. It's about building those relationships throughout the community. And the sheriff needs to do that. We need to invite all the law enforcement agencies to the table and have that discussion. Whenever we decide to make a decision, whether it's the jail, the 911 center, or the CAD system, all agencies in St. Louis County that are going to use these functions need to have a say in it. They do. It belongs to them. It belongs to all of us. And that's very important, and that needs to be done. So that's one of the biggest things that I will do, is open up those lines of communication throughout St. Louis County that have never been there, so we can all make those decisions together and work as one instead of each individual agency. Thank you.
Chad? Gordon, the same question. How do you intend to work effectively with other law enforcement entities in your role as sheriff?
Yeah, for me, we built the Duluth Police Headquarters in 2011 onto the existing sheriff's department with the idea of sharing more services. Nothing really has changed. We're still not sharing services like we had talked about, and we need to get that done. Additionally, I see tremendous opportunities. Right now, we had the whole northeastern part of the state was on a shared records management system. And slowly over the last 5-6 years, that has disintegrated. And Cook and Lake and Carlton now are on their own. They separated from ours. Duluth, the city of Duluth separated, Hermantown separated, and Virginia is now separated. So that tremendous information sharing records management system has fallen apart. We need leadership that's going to come in and put that back together. Also on the Iron Range, I'm honored that I got the Iron Range Police Chief's endorsement. And I got it because of my previous relationships and what I've talked about in sharing information, creating bi-weekly meetings where we get together and share what is happening in as far as crime goes, and targeting the problem offenders. Communication needs to be improved with our law enforcement partners. Up here, the jails were closed during COVID, and there was little to no communication with the chiefs about when they were going to be closed or when they were going to be opened. For me, that communication piece is critical, and as a sheriff, I will be up here with office hours and have leadership stationed up here as well. But the range to me is critical for our success in reducing crime in the county.
Thank you, Gordon. Jason, 30 seconds.
Just a couple clarifiers, just for the voters and the constituents. So I've been in my position for a little over 20 months, and I recognized what's being talked about here in terms of communication, collaboration, and team building. So I look forward to the change. We haven't had the ability to do, talk about a new sheriff for 20 years. So I'm confident with the team that I have in place and look forward to these new challenges.
Okay, Chad, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, I've been out listening to the people for the last 19 months, and exactly what they're asking, especially all in the law enforcement. They all want to be on the same sheet of music, and we need to be on that same sheet. Having these meetings, I've been talking about this for a long time, getting together and getting everybody on the same shared information. That needs to happen, and it takes time, and we need to sit down and listen to the law enforcement agencies and work together on one sheet of music.
And Gordon, 30 more seconds for you.
Yeah, it's critical we get a leader in here that's going to quickly address these issues that have come about in the last few years. The fact that our officers in certain departments can't communicate with dispatchers through the computer, and it's the frustration that I hear from the cops out there that they want to see something changed. We need someone that's going to come in and fix those issues that have been boiling about. And I think it's time for an outside leader to come in, and someone with experience and who's dealt with these issues in the past to come in and address them.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I believe, Chad, you're first on this. We've already alluded to the George Floyd incident and how law enforcement has suffered a severe drop in morale. If you're elected, what will be something specific you do to improve the morale in the county sheriff's department?
The morale is at an all-time low. And, in order to address how an officer feels or how it is out on the street, you have to actually work out there and understand it. As the sheriff, I would be out there with the officers, understanding it and knowing what they're going through, as I do already and as a police officer. I will say that, it's not just about the monetary backing, but the officers need to know that when they do good, the public's going to be on their side. And that's a huge thing. We need to market to the public on what we do in law enforcement so they understand. And that also opens up a huge thing for transparency. So if we're transparent with the public and they can see all the great things we're doing, they're gonna get a huge reward from the public, as in thank you for doing what you're doing. That's very important. We don't have that right now, and we need that. The public needs to know what we do as law enforcement, and yes, backing up the officers is one thing, but we also need the backing from the citizens. That's important. We have a huge divide between law enforcement and our communities, and nobody's doing anything to break that down. That needs to happen. We need to open the door. We need to tell them what we're doing, and that's very important, and it'll come back in spades for the officers when they know that the citizens have their back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Gordon, same question for you. Talked about the drop in morale. If you're elected, what will you specifically do to improve morale in the county sheriff's department?
There's no doubt the last few years have been really challenging to be in law enforcement. And it can be an occupational hazard in this line of work where when all you do is respond on calls of people in crisis and you see them on their worst days, that it can hurt morale. What we need to do is push law enforcement closer to the communities they serve. I know, spending time in this county, that our communities support law enforcement and they support our deputies and police officers out there. But they don't always hear it and they don't always feel it because they're often busy in responding to those crisis-related calls. We need to encourage deputies to go to the township meetings and meet those in the community that they would never otherwise meet. So often we deal with the same people over and over that are in crisis. And it is critical that deputies get to know everybody in the communities. It helps that balance. Some of my most rewarding times in police work was when I got to be friends with those people that I served. And I learned that the majority of the public supports law enforcement. And when I became friends with them, I got more information because people trusted me to tell me what was going on in their neighborhoods, who was doing what crime. I was safer because they had my back. They'd look out for me. And it was more rewarding because I knew they supported us. And that's the direction we need to go. And we need law enforcement leadership to stand up for law enforcement and encourage the best and brightest to enter and share the good things that our staff do every minute of every day.
Thank you, Gordon. Jason, same question for you, the drop in morale. If you're elected, what specifically will you do to improve morale in the county sheriff's office?
One thing I've chosen not to wait to do is start getting feedback from staff. Again, for us, this is a major organizational change. 20 years, no one has had to think about it. A lot of our staff are wondering, what is the direction? And we're already organizationally talking about where we want to bring this organization. There's many areas where we can improve. The marketing of our staff, as Chad said, I agree. Our staff do tremendous things on a daily basis, whether it's the law enforcement deputies, whether it's the 911 dispatchers, or our correctional officers. They don't get enough credit. So that's one step in building morale. Like it or not, money does mean something. And when we are falling double-digit percentages behind our local agencies, it used to be our metro agencies, and I get it, I understand it, but I will be an advocate, as I already am doing, in terms of compensation packages that not only addresses perhaps retention, but recruitment as well. So those are a couple of the areas where we can improve. Another big thing that everybody is watching is the culture. St. Louis County Sheriff's Office has always had a culture where you were given, I don't want to say free rein, but you were encouraged to do your work and you were supported. We want to maintain that.
Okay, thank you, Jason. 30 seconds, additional 30 seconds for you, Chad?
Yes, thank you. I've been talking about this for the last 18 months, exactly what Gordon has brought up. I go to these county meetings and I go to all these township meetings and they talk to me about wanting officers there, and that is very important. We have to market and we have to listen to the public, and that will help us bring the morale up because the public will stand behind us. And yes, wages are very important. We are far, far behind And I have talked to the commissioners about wages also about this.
Okay, Gordon, 30 seconds for you.
The deputies I talked to, they say their number one issue is compensation right now, that they have fallen behind. But they also talk about what is, some feel is a good old boys club, that promotions are unfair and there's other unfairness in how discipline's put out in the department. And when you study morale, fairness is often one of the number one issues that, or the perceived lack of fairness is one of the number one issues that creates morale issues. So to create systems and processes that ensures fairness in promotions and discipline is critical. And as sheriff, that's one thing that I would do.
Okay, thank you. Jason, 30 seconds.
Well, I've been labeled a member of the good old boys club just because I've been with the organization for 24 years. So my rebuttal would be this. Don't include me with the former undersheriff and soon to be former sheriff. Look at my responsibility within the divisions that I supervised, and we will see that there is a level of consistency. There is a level of fairness, and I intend to bring that character forward as sheriff.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And now at this time, Mr. Steve Potts will take over the questioning. Interrogation.
You have the right to remain silent.
I don't like that. I don't like that word. I know it's hard to prioritize what you want to end up doing, but that's what we have to do for this question. Gordon, we'll start with you. What do you see as a county sheriff's 3 most important duties?
Well, I think definitely public safety is critical, right? Ensuring that our county is safe, that we are providing law enforcement services for the county, that we're providing correctional facilities under statute that falls to the sheriff, and currently 911 falls under the sheriff. Those are very critical, that they are efficient and effective. And some of the benchmarks are, what is your crime rate? What direction it's going? One of my biggest concerns along those lines are the fentanyl overdoses. In my research, it looks like fentanyl is going to kill more people in this county than any other unnatural cause. Next up is probably suicides, and I believe we're somewhere in the 20s. But fentanyl is predicted, the overdose of fentanyl and drug overdoses is probably going to kill about 60-some residents of this county this year, if the estimates are correct. That is significant and very concerning. So as sheriff, one of the things I want to continue to do, and I did this as police chief as well, but continue to bring those people that are stakeholders and figure out what we can do to turn these numbers around. There's a lot of good people and great organizations working to improve these numbers, but the numbers are still going the wrong direction, and we need to do everything we can to turn that around. But public safety, no doubt, is, and the entities that I mentioned are the 3 areas that I think are most critical.
Thank you, Gordon. Jason, same question. What do you see as the county sheriff's 3 most important duties?
First and foremost, I think serving the people of this county impartially and equally. Again, we have a very diverse county in terms of size, needs, north versus south. So representing everyone equally so that there's, your ability to not be compromised along the way. Decisions are made for reasons. It's fact gathering. And in order to equitably serve, you need to communicate. Public safety, yes, most definitely. We need to identify what crises are affecting our jurisdictions. I agree, opioid, fentanyl, it's huge right now. The numbers are off the charts. We will beat last year's numbers. So identifying the priorities within our public health and cooperating with them to find out how we best help solve the problem. We can't arrest our way out of the situation. It's going to require a bunch of public health partners for us to collaborate. Thirdly, we need to provide our employees the necessary resources, the necessary training, and the necessary tools so that they can successfully do their job, not only for their own benefit, but for the expectations of the public.
Thank you. Chad, same question. What do you see as the county sheriff's 3 most important duties?
Thank you. The 3 most important duties that I see, number 1 is serving the people and protecting the people's rights. Not only that, but public safety is a huge one. Now, the sheriff has several different roles. One of the main roles is to the communities. One of the other roles is to provide public safety, and that's through the department. So as I see, serving the people and understanding what each community is looking to get out of their law enforcement, sitting down with the communities, opening up those doors, talking with the communities, and understanding what they expect out of us in law enforcement. We've never did that. That's never been done. We've never sat down with the communities and asked that important question, what would you like to see out of your law enforcement? That needs to come from your county sheriff. Not only that, but managing the department will also take care of public safety. If you have officers that go out every day and they're happy to be there and they will happy to do their job, they're gonna take it a different approach on having to be in the public community. And that's very important. And we need to have great people to do that. That's huge. We need to market to the public what we do. If we don't do that, people will not come to want to do that job and will not want to come to serve their community and understand what their community is all about.
Thank you. Gordon, 30 seconds for any additions?
Yeah, one of the things I'm most excited about is the relationships. The job of sheriff is really about relationships. And where you're responsible for public safety of the county and emergency management, it's critical that the sheriff knows township officials and they know the sheriff before there's a crisis, where they have each other's phone numbers. So I think it's really critical that we have an external leader who's gonna know the communities that they serve, be accessible, be engaged, and be a part of the county.
Thank you. Jason, 30 seconds for any additions?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Chad?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, thank you Gordon for taking a page out of my playbook. I have been all over the county, and it does take an outsider to understand that we need to get out and listen to the public. And go into these township boards, go into the fire department meetings as the sheriff, that's important. We need to be out there as the sheriff listening to the public, not just sitting in an office trying to manage a department. There's two sides to being sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, you get this one first. The last several years have seen the erosion of public confidence in law enforcement, not necessarily in St. Louis County, but I mean overall. What will you do to restore the public's trust in law enforcement, especially among people of color?
So organizationally, we have been monitoring this for roughly the last 20 some months. Post George Floyd was a black eye for law enforcement. Fortunately, in the northeast region of this area, we have still overwhelmingly good support. We have examples of deputies, police officers going to breakfast, lunch, or dinner, leaving, and their meal has been paid. So internally, we've already discussed our response. How do we respond differently to reinforce that public trust? There are initiatives, including the co-response model that we are really diving into to take advantage of. When we all entered law enforcement, it was a different response model. We recognize the fact that now perhaps a person in uniform with a gun isn't the appropriate person to actually help the situation or the person in need. So we're working collectively through the Clarity Project, through the co-responder model. There's a substance use response team that's attached to the Lake Superior Violent Offender Task Force. Those are all different responses that may have required in the past a uniformed officer. And so we're seeing those benefits. We're going to continue that. We're going to continue that collaboration with our partnerships.
All right, thank you. Chad, same question. The last several years have seen the erosion of public confidence in law enforcement. What will you do to restore the public's trust in law enforcement, especially among people of color?
First thing I will do is 100% transparency. It is very important. The public always feels like law enforcement is hiding something and not telling what's really going on. I feel as sheriff, it is your responsibility to bring all your communities together and keep everybody up to date on what's happening in each one of their communities. Now, there's a flip side to that. The public also needs to know that when law enforcement doesn't do the right thing, that we are going to hold them accountable. And that is part of the sheriff's responsibility. So there's two sides to it. There is the transparency side of showing the public exactly what's going on and not hiding anything from them and not covering things up that's been done in the past. That is very important. When an officer does not follow or violate somebody's rights, we need to let the public know that. They have a right to know that. This is their sheriff's department. It belongs to them. You know, also with that being said, we need to teach officers these days that compassion goes a long ways. We need to understand what the communities are going through and not be desensitized to how things are today, and understand that compassion goes a long ways with the communities. It really does. And once again, that's what the sheriff being out in the communities and understanding the communities in the county.
Thank you. And Gordon, you get the last word on this question. The last several years have seen the erosion of public confidence in law enforcement. What will you do to restore the public's trust, especially among people of color?
Well, study after study shows when people know the law enforcement officers that serve them, know them beyond just driving by in a car, when they know their names, when they establish relationships with youth at different events, that they feel safer. When people know their law enforcement, they feel safer. So that community policing model needs to be integrated into the sheriff's department, right? We talked about going to the community meetings and just showing up and being a part. That is critical. And some deputies are doing a great job of it. Other areas we need improvement. Doing things like a warrant amnesty day. There are a significant amount of warrants in this county where you have a day where people can come in and clear up their warrant. They're set up on a fine schedule, so they don't have to be looking over their back all the time. As well as helping people get their driver's license back. There is an amazing amount of people that don't have driver's license because they forgot to pay a fine or whatever the reason. As part of that amnesty day, in my last department, we had the amnesty day, and then we had the state there to help people get their driver's license back. Because when you don't have a driver's license, it's hard to have a job, especially in rural areas. Sharing data, traffic stop data, working with community groups like the NAACP to talk about, hey, how can we do better? What do you want to see? Creating civilian review boards, things along those lines. Sharing your information and being integrated with the community is critical for addressing the distrust.
Thank you. Jason, 30 seconds for any additions?
Yeah, the transparency aspect is huge. Recently, the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office did implement the body-worn cameras. Arguably, we should add them a lot sooner, but the good thing is we have them now. That, for our organization, has been well received, and I expect that the public will appreciate the fact that we finally hopped on board. That will allow for further transparency, which should help gain the public's trust.
All right, thank you. Chad?
Yes, thank you very much. It does take somebody like myself that hasn't been in law enforcement for 24 years to bring, or 30 years, to bring a different outlook to this, one from the community and a community member standpoint. Yes, I am a law enforcement officer, but I understand what the community is looking at. And we need to have this transparency in order to earn their trust back. We really do. It's very, very important.
Thank you. Gordon, 30 seconds for any additions?
Yeah, one last quick addition is, one thing that I see is something I would do immediately is I would post all the Sheriff's Department policies online. I can't find policies. We talk about the body camera policy. It's also critical to seek input from the community on the policies that you're developing. For instance, do you allow your deputies to see the video of after a shooting event, an officer-involved shooting event? Those are things that people want to see, they want to know it, and there's no doubt in my mind that the first step of transparency is putting the stuff online so people can access it.
Okay, thank you. This question to you first, Chad. If elected, what change, if any, do you feel needs to happen immediately with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office?
There are so many changes that need to happen. Immediately is a big word. One of the biggest things that needs to happen is the sheriff needs to be out in the communities. The sheriff needs to open up those lines of communication between all the communities, all the law enforcement agencies, and the officers that serve at the sheriff's department. You know, we do have great law enforcement in northern Minnesota. I'm part of that. I will tell you we do. We have a great sheriff's department. It could do a little better. And we need to open them up. And I feel that would be one of the biggest things that I would do right away, is that line of communication is going to be open. Everybody, every law enforcement agency, every fire department, every county, every township board will have an opportunity to have a say in how their sheriff's department is run. All that stuff that we're talking about here today, I've been out in the community talking with community members for the last 18 months, and that is one of their biggest complaints. Chad, we don't know what law enforcement does. We need to open that up. That's huge. You could be on all the boards you want to be on, but people want to know what we do. They want to know that transparency. And then when they start seeing that, they will start trusting law enforcement. They will. There's a huge divide there, and we got to break that down. And it's the sheriff's responsibility to do that.
Thank you. Gordon, the same question. If elected, what changes, if any, do you feel needs to happen immediately with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office?
As I traverse the county and talk with policing leaders and law enforcement deputies and officers, they talk about the COVID restriction at the jail. Since March of 2020, misdemeanor arrests have not been allowed to be taken to the county jail other than mandatory arrests. So I heard a story of an area department a few weeks ago. They had a woman breaking out windows at a neighbor's house that didn't meet the felony amount. Then she went and was harassing the neighbors, didn't meet another charge. It was still a misdemeanor. There was a couple other calls throughout the day, and then she got in her car and drove the wrong way down the road at a low-speed chase. Officers ended up spending, I want to say it was 10, 12 hours of their day dealing with her, and they could not bring her to jail because of this sheriff administration policy where the jail's closed for misdemeanors. Officers, deputies, and police chiefs have said that is causing more crime in our communities and a significant lack of accountability. The first thing I will do is change that policy to go back to what it was pre-COVID, so that when there is someone that is creating these significant issues in a community, whether it be misdemeanor or not, that the jail will be open for law enforcement officers to bring people there and hold them accountable.
Thank you. Jason, same question. If elected, what change, if any, do you feel needs to happen immediately with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office?
Well, if elected, I feel the need for us to organize as a unit. I look forward to that opportunity, getting everybody back in a staff meeting and being able to tell them we're again listening. We're beyond the establishment. The old is out, the new is in. From a command staff level, we've had 6 turnovers within the last 22 months in terms of our lieutenants, supervising deputies, and higher ups. When Ross goes and one more lieutenant goes, that'll be 8. You're talking 85% of your former leadership team. So when we want to affect change, it's already been happening and it will continue in the future. That's going to create buy-in by our staff. I'm confident in the reputation that I have, that I built over the last 24 years in terms of the support from the deputies, from local law enforcement agencies, in terms of how I go about doing my business. So first and foremost, we're going to focus internally, identify our needs, identify what the expectations by our staff in terms of how we change this organization, and then we're going to send the messaging about how we go and build public trust, what the new response models are in terms of the new sheriff's office.
Thank you. Chad, 30
Yes.
seconds for any additions?
Yes, it is very important that we end the catch and release program and the jails do open up. That is very important. We don't want to have lawlessness in our communities. That needs to happen. but it also needs to happen in collaboration with the county attorney's office. We can arrest everybody out there, but if there's no prosecution on the backside, we are wasting our time. So the sheriff also needs to facilitate that relationship with the county attorney's office, that the communities don't want to have lawlessness anymore.
Yeah, thank you. Gordon, 30 seconds for any additions?
Yeah, besides that, the jail issue, for me, as a leader, I've always implemented strategic plans, and strategic plans are done with input from communities, from staff, from your stakeholders, businesses, partners. It's clear to me that a strategic plan is needed, and many people want to have the input in that, and the staff needs to know the direction, what the direction is. And I cannot speak enough about the importance of having a strategic plan, and not only doing it internally, but also having it online so people can see the direction that you're going.
Thank you. And Jason, last word on the question.
You got a warning there. No real rebuttal. The misdemeanor arrest, it's not a policy, it's a judicial order. So, which was signed back in the day by Chief Judge Sally Tarnowski. So there's a little more to it than a policy, right? But regardless, the pipe is clogged, the process, the system is not moving. The courts need to get back. They need to re-engage.
Thank you. Pastor Dan?
Okay, Stephen, if I'm following correctly, Gordon is the first one to get this question, I believe. The budget. Considering the sheriff's budget, how would the budget you propose be different than the current one?
I sat down with a city or county budget official a few weeks ago and really did a deep dive into the budget. I don't see any glaring issues or anything that I think needs to be changed immediately. Most public safety budgets, about 90% is salary and benefits. So the rest, that 10% is, training and pencils and cars and things along those lines. So for me, after that deep dive, I got a good understanding of where the budgeting is going, and I don't see the need for many changes. And I will add that this is another area where experience matters, and overseeing budgets for 16 years and having a track record of being on budget year after year after year and working well with our elected officials to ensure that budgets are sufficient and that we're meeting elected officials and community members' needs is critical in that effort. But I wouldn't propose any changes to it immediately.
Same question, thank you. Same question for you, Jason. When it comes to the budget, what changes would you propose to the current budget if you are elected?
Having been involved specifically in the last two budgets, there's nothing immediate that I would look to change. As an administrator, you're always being fiscally responsible. There are going to be things throughout the course of a year that are going to affect your budget. You need to be prepared to adjust, change implementations, change purchasing along the way. This last year, fuel prices really hurt us. In terms of public safety, we don't really have a choice to park the vehicles and not respond. We're still required to respond. We adjust. In 911, I was in charge of a $6 million budget with our 911 center. There's things you can do along the way. Perhaps you don't do a remodel this year, you push it off. You encumber your money and do it the next year. But we, overall, we are pretty fiscally responsible. And, I have to say, county admin does a really good job, and sort of the county commissioners keeping us in check along the way. So in order to get that through, you better convince them, otherwise it's not going to happen. So.
Thank you, Jason. Chad, same
Yes.
question for you. When it comes to the budget, how would the budget that you proposed be different from the current budget at the sheriff's office?
So as a business owner, I manage several budgets of our own money, which is a little different than the other two candidates. They've managed government money, which is easier to manage than it is your own money. It's not coming out of your own pocket, so you don't have to worry about making payroll and paying for gas and all that other stuff, because we, the taxpayers, are paying for that. So I will say that I come into this with a different outlook on it and a different set of experience. So I've managed budgets up to $55 million, and that's all great. I will tell you that a budget under Chad Walsh is probably going to increase a little bit. We're going to look at some things, and I've dived into the budget local of the Sheriff's Department, and there's some things I would like to change. I will tell you it's going to change because the wages for the whole department are going to go up. The sheriff needs to stand behind the employees and push that. We also need a community relations department and a public engagement department. That needs to happen. So that is going to change the budget a little bit. So these are very important things that need to happen in the Sheriff's Department. So it's not only about, keeping it there, but the sheriff doesn't answer to the commissioners with the budget. Per statute, the sheriff can take it a step further if he doesn't get it approved from the commissioners. But yes, under a Chad Walsh sheriff, the budget's going to go up because wages are going up, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Gordon, 30 seconds.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I do have experience running a business. My wife and I have a small business, and recently just paid taxes, income as well as property taxes coming up, and it's a significant amount. We've done this business for over 20 years and have been very successful at it. I don't talk a lot about it publicly, but we do run a business as well, a private business that we contribute a lot to the St. Louis County economy.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. Jason, 30 seconds.
Well, I don't own a business. So you can put your full faith and effort into me managing the $42 million budget for 2023 that I'm going to be the best penny saver I can. Again, we need to be responsible, with our expenditures, with our expectations. But yes, we do need to be open to convincing the citizens, what our additional needs are moving forward, because it does affect public safety.
Okay, thank you. Chad, 30 seconds.
Yes. So back to the budget. It is important that the budget is available online for the public to see and spelled out to every dollar to where it goes. And the people should have a say in it. It's the taxpayers' money. It doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the citizens, and they have a right to say where it goes. And they've never asked us that. That needs to be asked. The sheriff needs to open that up. We need to buy locally. That doesn't happen right now. So that needs to happen.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Jason. Excuse me, I think this agreement that we need to address the drug problem in northern Minnesota. What specifically would you do to address the drug problem in northern Minnesota?
Well, I've already specifically staffed 2 additional FTEs to the Lake Superior Violent Offender Task Force. We're seeing great work by that group, which is a collaboration by multiple law enforcement agencies within our area. So there's an equal commitment, but I felt the need, based on the numbers we were seeing and the work that they were doing, to increase that. Earlier on, we talked about, the opioid overdoses, the fentanyl use, that commitment, and sending a message to people that are bringing dangerous drugs into our community from outside this area, all while possessing firearms, which they're precluded to have. That's the first step. Send the message and give the resources to the people that need it so we can effectively keep people safe. The other thing is like I had mentioned before, we can't arrest our way out of it. There are certain aspects of, the substance use disorder that we need to realize people need help behind the scenes. Certain bad people deserve to be in jail, there's no doubt about it, but we can't have our jail population, 15 to 20 inmates being there when they really need post-incarceration services and follow-up.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Chad, same question for you. When it comes to drugs, what specifically would you do to address the drug problem in northern Minnesota?
The drug problem, there's two sides to it as I see. The side is the preventive side, and then the other side, which is the supplier side. We can throw law enforcement at it all day long and go after suppliers. We still need to have a county attorney that is going to hold these people accountable, and there's a huge issue there with the county attorney and the courts, and that needs to be changed. It does. I don't feel getting the federal government involved in our business in St. Louis County is important. We also need a preventive side. You know, we need to be in our communities as law enforcement, and I say this and I'll say it again several times. As a business owner, as a community member of St. Louis County, I set out 18 months ago and I met people throughout all these communities, and getting to know folks and having our law enforcement officers in these communities, the preventive side is gonna come out tenfold. Before the person even gets involved in the meth or the other drugs, the opioids, or any of these other things, if we have good mentors and we have good people in place to try to prevent that, that's a whole different outlook on it. We can't arrest our way out of this. But if we are going to arrest people, as in suppliers, we also need to have a great county attorney and a court system that's gonna hold these folks accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Gordon, same question for you. What specifically would you do to address the drug problem in northern Minnesota?
Yeah, there's no doubt the Lake Superior Violent Crime Task Force does tremendous work, but oftentimes in the rural areas, particularly on the range, it's harder to address. The local police departments know who's doing what. The local residents know who's doing what. I want to double down on our efforts on the range to address these drug issues. I was talking with a business owner who had to close his business in Virginia because his insurance requirement is people had to take a drug test. And when he told applicants that they had to take a drug test, they would walk out the door. He couldn't get people to fill these positions for $20-some an hour. There is a significant drug issue here, and we really need to work harder at it. It's not all about law enforcement. It's one spoke in the wheel. We're not doing the education and prevention with our kids like we should be. I've got a 10th grader. I asked her last year when she was telling me about the drugs in her school, what kind of prevention and education did you get this year for drugs? None. That's a significant issue. We need to get in the schools and talk about these issues. I had it all, when I was growing up, it was in my face all the time, the dangers of drugs, and we've gotten away from that. You know, federal resources are important. We don't have the resources to deal with all these drug issues in the rural areas. And when you talk about successful prosecution, I have seen, and as a leader, I have seen dozens and dozens of people that are dealing bad drugs in our community that are effectively dealt with through federal prosecution that the state courts couldn't touch.
Okay, thank you. Jason, 30 additional seconds for you.
No follow-up.
Okay, thank you. Chad, 30 seconds.
Yes, I agree. We need to get back into the schools. We need to get in our communities, and your local law enforcement agencies that are in their communities know where the bad actors are, and they know that they can also reach the young folks in the schools. That's the preventative side that we're not talking about. We need to be part of that. We need to be in these communities because we can stop it before it even happens. And then there's gonna be no room for a supplier.
Okay, thank you. Gordon, 30 seconds.
Treatment is another big part. If we had someone that came to us today and said, hey, I am on meth or heroin or whatever, and I am committing crime as a result to feed my habit, I want to get into treatment right away. If they didn't have insurance, it could take months and months to get them into treatment. And that is an area that people don't realize, and it's hindering our ability to address these issues.
Okay, thank you. Chad, the next question starts with you. How do you plan to balance the demands of law enforcement in the rural and urban areas? I think we have one urban area, not Duluth, but.
Yes, you know, each individual city like Hibbing and Virginia and Duluth, they have their own police department, so we'll work hand in hand with them. But with the rural areas, we're back to that. The officer needs to be in the community. They need to have a first name basis with the residents of their community, and that needs to happen. And we need to be listening to what their community wants out of their law enforcement officer. You know, we talk about this. You know, I had a member from a rural community tell me, yeah, our deputy used to come to all of our meetings until he retired. I said, well, how was crime? 0. He knew what the crime was. He knew who was committing the crime. We don't have that anymore. That has gone to the wayside. So we need to get back to that. And then we also need to work with the bigger departments that we have around here, the Hibbing, the Virginias, the Chisholms, you know, up on the range. All these departments are important. It's not just about the range and Duluth. We have to work together all as one. So I'm not gonna separate St. Louis County out to say north and south and the range and Duluth. We're all one county still. And that's how we need to work as one county. So we all need to come together on this and work at it together. So I'm not gonna isolate the range from Duluth. As the sheriff, it is your job to make that relationship happen.
Okay, Gordon, same question. How do you plan to balance the demands of law enforcement between the rural and urban areas?
Yeah, well, first of all, I gotta say, there are some deputies that are doing a phenomenal job of building relationships and know their community well. They're ingrained in their communities. You know, we can't forget that. But we gotta make decisions based on data. We need to look at response times throughout the county. We need to look at crime rates in various areas. Those are important key factors when determining how you're gonna allocate your resources. I think there's a lot of opportunities to look at how deputies are allocated now by using that data, as well as input from citizens. But I know that all too often, the deputies are stretched thin in certain areas, and it's something that we need to fix. And I'm a data-driven leader, and that's how I'm gonna make the decisions. And I think that we need a comprehensive study on this very issue.
Jason, again, thank you. Jason, how do you plan to balance the demands of law enforcement in the rural and urban areas?
Rural is primary, right? We have police chiefs in the municipalities, and so therefore as sheriff, or as even undersheriff, when I'm looking at data, which is important, you know, we pull CAD data on our townships so that we have an understanding of what call types, what crime types are occurring, what the prevalence is during those time periods. And that's where we begin to assess how we deploy our resources. When I started back in 1997, there were 2 patrol deputies in the southern half of St. Louis County, 2, no supervisors. We're a little bit better, but now it's only 4. So that gives you it's the magnitude. Our northern offices are the same. And so we need to rely on those municipalities, but we also need to be there when they need us. You see that in terms of our response from emergency management. We have that expertise. You see that in terms of our response from our emergency response team. We are well equipped. We will be there to assist any agency, any locale, because it is all one county, St. Louis County. You know, as you develop those crime trends, we do our best to really put people where they need to be. That community relationship is also huge. If we don't know what's happening, we can't help you fix it.
Okay, thank you. The clock's going a little faster than I thought. So I think we'll forego the rebuttal on that question. You can certainly include it in your closing statement. You each have 3 minutes. So Gordon, you will start, Jason, and then Chad.
Okay. Well, again, I thank the Chamber for the opportunity. This is a good chance for people to hear from us on exactly where we're coming from. You know, and we talked about this part about rural versus urban. One of the things that I've heard a lot from chiefs in the northern part of the county is oftentimes they feel that they're having to take over calls that are outside of their jurisdiction because of how thin deputies are. And that is one thing that really needs to be addressed. The county used to have what was called resident deputies, where deputies were assigned to one specific area and they lived in that area. That was great for the community policing perspective and response times, and that's one thing that I think is important. But as people go to the polls for all the different elections this year, I think one of the things that people need to look at, that I would encourage them to look at, is what have people done? What kind of community involvement have the candidates have? Have they been involved in youth activities? Have they coached? Have they been a part of the community? What's their track record for keeping on budget? You know, one of the things that I say is the best predictor of the future is the past. And in Duluth, we lowered crime significantly. We had great community relations with all communities. And that's the kind of sheriff you're gonna get. I am not an office guy. I like to get out and about, and I think people need to know their sheriff, and the sheriff needs to be accessible. I'll have office hours throughout the northern part of the county, and I'll be accessible where people will know me, and they'll be able to talk to me, and I'll be present and engaged.
Thank you, Gordon. Jason, your 3 minutes for your closing statement.
I also would like again to thank PAT and the Hibbing Chamber. It is very important. We have not had the opportunity to elect a sheriff in the last 20 years. You know, we were speaking earlier, a lot of people don't really understand the duties and responsibilities. We often are, you know, kind of generalized as law enforcement altogether. But again, there are differences. You know, the challenges unique to St. Louis County because of the geography are things that we're all trying to take into account. You know, one thing I can guarantee the voters is that I'm gonna continue serving the citizens as I have for the last 24 years. I've invested in my occupation. I've invested in the citizens in this county. I'm proud of my profession. And although there is opportunity for change, we are in a good spot. We are in a good spot in terms of the support that we've been given in our area. We're in a good spot in terms of the talent of our staff in all three divisions. Again, it's not just law enforcement. In a most recent county survey, 911 and patrol response was rated most favorably. So as we continue as administrators to really look at all of these things, the budgets, how we improve services, keeping and maintaining public safety, we're doing a good job. And so doesn't mean we can't change and get better. And I look forward to that opportunity as well. I think I've proven my abilities, and I'm proud to say that I deserve to be at this table for consideration, and I would appreciate anybody's vote.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank
And
you.
Chad.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for allowing this to happen today. So, I'll address a couple issues. The sheriff is a very, very important role in the county. The sheriff has a lot of different duties, and we've covered some of those today, and that's phenomenal. You know, the first responsibility of the sheriff is to protect the rights of all the citizens of the county. And the second thing is to provide a peaceful county and great public safety. So there's two sides to it. One is the sheriff needs to be out talking with the communities and be part of the community. The flip side to that is the sheriff needs to manage a department to provide great public safety. And, you know, we have fallen short, and yes, we have a great sheriff's department. They do answer the call when you call them, but we have fallen short in law enforcement as a whole. And we have not listened to our local communities on what they want and what they would like to see. Times change, and we need to change with that. And it takes an outsider like myself to come in and listen to the communities like I have. You know, I heard some things today. You know, I heard a person say, look at somebody's past history. I encourage the voters to take a good long look at what's out there for past history. It is very important because it plays into what's going to happen if that person gets elected. Past history is very important. And yes, I will tell you, as a community member, as a business owner, as a law enforcement officer, as a father, as a husband, I have been involved in all these things in all of our communities. We have great communities. We need a sheriff that will stand behind them, that will be part of them, that will stand up behind a department and be part of that department. We need a sheriff that is going to Go fight for the officers for more money, more benefits. Not just the officers that work the road, but everybody that's in the department. If we're losing jailers, if we're losing 911 people, there's a problem. There is. They have great services there. We have great people that work there. But we need this sheriff, the next sheriff, whoever that may be, to stand up and not only fight for the citizens and protect their rights, but to fight for everybody that works in that department. And yes, it is very important for all of us that live in this county that your next sheriff have great integrity and you can entrust that person. So do some checking into the history on the candidates. You should, because history will speak a lot for itself and how it will turn out. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today as a write-in candidate. It was great. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chad. And thank you to each of the three of you for your time answering the questions. Once again, thank you to Hibbing Public Access Television for being here to record and broadcast this event. And I do thank my colleagues, Steve Potts, for he's been working hard developing these questions, asking the questions, and Shelley Hansen, the president of the Hibbing Area Chamber, who's done a lot of work just putting this together, as well as being timekeepers. Finally, thank you to those of you who are watching. I believe there are people watching this, and that's important because an informed electorate is really important for democracy, for government, and the office of St. Louis County Sheriff, I think you'd all agree, it's an important office, and it's good that the voters are informed as they go to the polls. So thank you, and have a good afternoon.